And to my second kind of, if you want me to reiterate,
No,
I
I
can.
remember on this the idea of green fascism. It is it is this great reset that Prince Charles is calling global Britain, um, where they know that eliminating fossil fuels in poor countries will massively increase the death rate. You see a horrific situation in Haiti right now, and where you really see the fraud of the so-called environmentalist movement. 75% of their energy comes from charcoal. Now, if you care about greenery, people's lungs, you're going to encourage them to burn wood and burn dung. You say
Mhm.
that that's better than having a clean coal, they've cleaned up coal quite a bit, a coal-fired power plant, or right? That is such, I mean, it's just such fraud. It's obvious the intent. Or in Europe, who did blow up the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipeline? That sure let an awful lot of methane into the air. And now we have people in Europe going back to burning down the forest. They're going to burn wood for fuel. Well, is that really so much better than natural gas? I mean, I think we really need to get to nuclear power. We should be beyond
Oh,
combustion.
well, let me ask you about nuclear power, because I even heard that some, and this is true, that some Green Party members would actually agree with that, some not. But my question about nuclear power is, and that's because I'm from California originally, and I lived in Monterey, and there's a nuclear power plant called in San Luis Obispo area, it's Montana de Oro is what it's called, right? But it's placed on the San Andreas Fault, and it sits right on it, on one of the most pristine parts of the coastline that is now inaccessible because of this, nuclear power plant. But they don't know what to do with the radiation. They shut it down because they got more than they could handle. And so my question is, I know that we can develop technology, but what do we do with the radioactive waste? And
Well,
look what
this is
happened in Japan. And in Japan is very, very efficient, but they still had Fukushima. And then of course you have Chernobyl, and you have, so what is changing, and what can you tell people about nuclear power?
Well, first of all, there's a huge difference between, say, Chernobyl, Fukushima, and Three Mile Island, and so on. In Fukushima, as far as I know, people have not died from radiation. It's not to say that you didn't have a big cleanup job, but I actually thought that what happened there was a demonstration of how incredibly safe nuclear power is, because you had a massive tsunami which did the damage. And it's been a difficult cleanup, but people, you didn't have masses of people dying from radiation and so on. Chernobyl was a different thing because they were using the whole plant improperly, and it was a mess on the waste. And then all these other things like Three Mile Island, there really was no issue, but the hysteria. Why? Because if you want to keep people impoverished and backwards, you've got to stop them from having any efficient form of energy. And then on the waste, we were actually in the 70s developing something called a breeder reactor. Carter shut it down, where you could take literally 96% of what we call waste is reusable. And the other 4% can be used in medical isotopes. And there's great uses for it in medicine, actually, very interesting things. And there's some very interesting work being done on low dose radiation. I don't know if you followed this, but some apparently they used to use low dose radiation on treating pneumonia, and it had an incredible beneficiary effect. And then I don't know if it was after we dropped the nuclear bombs or what, there became such fear they stopped doing it. And it was picked up again by some doctors, I think in Massachusetts, who were trying to figure out how to treat COVID. And they were going through every lung disease, everything, and they came across that this had been very effective. And they went back to trying low dose radiation. And the way they discovered, I think, was someone would have an X-ray and their lungs would begin to clear up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's a difference between moderation. There are clearly certain thresholds in living processes and non-living where one thing can be beneficial in a certain amount, and if you cross that threshold, then it's deadly harmful.
Right.
So that's something I think really a very interesting area of study, but we should be reprocessing the waste. We really should. We don't even need to mine anymore. We could use the waste we have to power new high temperature, gas cooled. We could
Well,
power.
Germany is going to go to nuclear. Is that true? I mean, I've been hearing that Germany is looking at that.
Germany
Mhm.
going back to it, you mean? Yeah, they
Probably
are.
to getting more aggressive about using nuclear energy.
Well,
Is that true?
Germany was idiotic. They took Fukushima and shut down almost all of their nuclear plants, and that
Mhm.
left them totally dependent on fossil fuels. There's a
Mhm.
few nuclear plants that weren't shut. Now they're saying, well, maybe we shouldn't shut them down because we're all going to freeze this winter if we keep it up. But that gets back to what I said earlier. I mean, are they really going to stick? How productive is it to be allied with the United States if you're going to freeze and starve to death for the privilege of having a nuclear war with Russia? I think it might dawn on some people that this doesn't make that much sense.
Yeah, with friends like that, who needs enemies, right?
Exactly.